All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Difficult Conversations. I'm Dean Jenkins, and tonight we have an exceptional show planned for everybody out there. So, when this all began, well, prior to this all beginning with Difficult Conversations and Supply the Why, I was trying to figure out how to have a difficult conversation with some of our local young adults in my town that were of the Black Lives Matter ideology, and I couldn't quite figure out the best way to go about having this conversation in light of everything that was going on. So I decided to reach out to the person that I would think has the most difficult conversations, maybe even in the country, the chief of Ferguson PD. So for those of you that don't remember, Ferguson PD, for the city of Ferguson, Missouri, is where the Michael Brown, Officer Darren Wilson incident took place, the infamous hands up, don't shoot case. So the chief of that department, Chief Jason Armstrong, I reached out to him on LinkedIn, and he was awesome. He decided, he said, "Hey, listen, well, why don't we get together, have a video conference call?" 2 hours plus later, we had a couple aha moments. We had a lot of great topics, and now it's time. We've come in 180, and now it's time for me to bring him on and for him to shed some of his wisdom for all of you. So, without further ado, folks, let me introduce Chief Jason Armstrong of Ferguson PD. Chief, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Dean, man. Appreciate you having me on.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited to have you on. Again, you kind of gave me a nice the shot in the arm I needed in my career to kind of help me refocus and get back on track, and it meant a lot to me.
Hey, that's what it's all about, man. That's what it's all about, man. Reaching back to help the next ones come up.
Awesome. It's amazing that you were able to take time away from your family to be with me tonight. So we got a good one today. We're going to talk about the crisis of leadership and some of the
Okay.
many different forms that it manifests itself in. So, Ferguson, let's get the elephant out of the room right now. I'm sure, especially like you've been there, what, about 14 months now? You've been the chief?
A little bit more than that, man. I'm up about 15, 16 months now.
15, 16 months. I know when you're in a job where you're 24/7, every second counts.
Yes.
So, how are you handling that? What are you doing to help build trust in the community?
The number one thing that it all comes back to is just communication. And the community up here just wants to be informed. They want to be informed, and they want to have open forms of communication, open dialogue, with law enforcement up here, just so they can have a better understanding of what's going on and the changes that we're making and the things that we're trying to put in play here, and just what steps we're taking to see real change. And when I talk about it, with the vision of what we're trying to create here is to build lasting change. There is no overnight fix, to the problems in this country.
Sure.
And the problems here in Ferguson are no different than the problems in any other community around the country. And so, it's communicating, with our citizens, our residents here, and getting their input so they can be a part of the process. And that's largely, what the change has been here is we have community input built into just about everything that we have going on here at the police department. No officer is hired to work in this department without going in front of a 100% citizen panel, interview panel. No officer is promoted here now without going in front of a citizens panel. And so, all of our policies, that stem from the consent decree that we're under, they're posted online for public input before we finalize them. And so, the community is a big part of what we have going on here. And so that's one of the ways that it helps us in the work that we're doing here in trying to build up those relationships in those partnerships in the community, because they have to be a part of what we're doing.
It all sounds good, but I got to ask you, Chief, is there an education process? Like, how are you? Because at some point, if people are going to be part of a decision making process, they kind of have to be educated on what exactly it is they're making a decision on. So, what are you doing to educate these boards and that you have as part of your decision making process?
So there are a couple different entities that are in play here. We have some boards that are mandated through our consent decree that had to be created and that we had to partner with. And so they have some different trainings and things that they may go through specific to the board that they're on. And then when we have community members, so that's where the communication piece comes in. Now, one of the things that we're going to create here, we haven't had a chance to finalize it yet, is a citizens police academy that we were going to put on, and that is going to be the backbone of the education piece of what we're providing to the citizens. But without having that in place, one of the ways that we do that is just through some of the regular things that we have in place right now of how we interact with our community. So our city is broken up into a lot of different neighborhood associations. Now, of course, with COVID, COVID has thrown a big wrench into a lot of things. But before COVID
Sure
started
has.
shutting things down, we regularly went to these neighborhood association meetings. Officers would go to them. Sometimes I would attend them, and that's where we could really have just a kind of intentional conversation, with some of our community members in that space, just talking about what we had going on and some of the challenges that they were facing out in the community. And so when we bring them in to be a part of some of our processes, that dialogue doesn't stop. And so we're talking about the interview process. We provide them, with documentation because it's no different than, if it was my staff doing the interview. There are laws that govern, questions that you can ask and that you can't ask and all of that stuff. And so we provide them with all of that guidance up front before the interview process to make sure that everybody understands, what's required of them. But the input, the feedback that they're giving us is the critical part for how these candidates answer these questions. Okay, from a community perspective, how do they view the answers that are given and how they match up to from what they want to see from an officer that's patrolling their neighborhood. So like I said, it's a continual work in progress, but since I've been here, it seems to be working pretty good.
Oh, I definitely like the way you're thinking outside the box, because there's no blueprint for what's going on right now. So you gotta think outside the box, and you gotta be creative. And I'll never fault anybody for trying new things and just trying to change the paradigm. Go ahead,
and
Chief. I
and
know you want
and
to get in.
and that's one of the things that we really have to start looking at in law enforcement as a whole is, man, what can we try differently? Because all right, man, as we see, man, what we're doing right now is not working for everybody. It may be working for some people, but it's not working for everybody.
Is it
And
possible to
and
have a system that works for everybody?
I think it is. And if it's not, there definitely is. It is possible to have your intentions try to meet that. We may never get there, but we can work toward it every day.
Mhm.
And that's the mindset that you have to have. And so one of the things that it's going to take is it's not just law enforcement getting in the room with community members to try to come up, with ways to resolve some of the issues, but community members have to come into the room with other community members that have different needs and different desires from law enforcement and from their community as a whole. And they have to have discussions and conversations to see how they can get on the same page, because everybody doesn't want the same thing from us. And so
That's true.
you have different parts of the community that want different things from law enforcement, and it's fine for them to have that, but we all need to have a seat at the table to discuss, okay, well, what does that look like on a grand scale? And one of the benefits to some of the stuff that we're doing here in Ferguson, I think it was last month or a couple months ago, we had a community dialogue session where we had just different members of the community in this meeting. I was in the meeting, some other officers were in the meeting. And so we just got and it was facilitated by a mediation service. And so we had neutral facilitators, facilitating this conversation. And it was refreshing for me because some of the dialogue in it they were speaking my reality, but I didn't have to speak up on it myself. I had community members that were from different parts of the community, and so they had different takeaways and they had different issues. And so one community member brought up one issue. I think the question that was on the table was, what keeps you up at night? And so, so one community member gave their answer about what kept them up at night. And then another community member jumped in and was like, all right, it's interesting that you say that because I don't have that concern. I don't have that problem. These are the things that keep me up at night. And so, everybody has something a little bit different, that interests them. And so, we need to have all of those individuals in the room, talking about those things so we could really try to see, like you said, how can we think outside the box so we can provide a service that everybody is able to benefit from, and everybody sees some value in the service that we're providing.
I like it. I mean, it certainly sounds good. Probably like most veteran police officers, I'm probably a little skeptical because I mean, the reality is, we're out there and a lot of us that with boots on the ground, we see it where this job is very much turned into a little bit of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like you're helping one person, your heart's in it, you're doing the right thing, but then there's somebody on the other side that feels like they're neglected or they're being left out.
And so, man, and that's where just being open and honest about things, come from. And one of the things that I talk about in any group that I'm in front of is, all right, man, I'm not here to say what you want to hear. That's not what my job entails. I'm going to be honest with you about what's going on and how things are going, and whatever the situation at hand is. All right, I'm just going to tell you, the truth about it, or give you my point of view or my perspective on it. And some people may like it, some people may not. Now, if somebody has a problem with it, I'm always open to have additional conversation and a different additional communication about it to see if there's something that I'm missing, or something that I can better address. But at the end of the day, like, every situation stands on its own. And so when I'm speaking about something, I'm only speaking to that one individual situation, because the next situation, how it may be very similar, it may have just a small difference that changes the outlook on what our response would be or how we would handle it. But one of the things that we have to do a better job of in law enforcement is just being honest about about whatever it is. And so a couple weeks ago, we had a incident here in Ferguson, and the community, a large part of the community was very upset about it. And so people are calling my office about it. And when I got it and looked into it, all right, man, we didn't handle this the way that I wanted us to handle it. And all right, I came out and I put out a release that day, the next day, and explaining what happened. Like, all right, guys, we made a mistake. We made
Chief,
a
can you
mistake.
expound upon that a little bit for those of us that aren't familiar with the incident? Are you at liberty to, or is it
But
still under
yeah, it was it
investigation?
was it was a call for service, and it had to deal with a business owner, was assaulted. And what happened was, one officer had more of the information than the supervisor did. And so the supervisor showed up, after the fact. And so when the supervisor got there, the supervisor only heard part of the information of what all had happened. And so the supervisor made a decision of what was going to happen with this individual without having all of the information available to the supervisor. And so it was an individual, and it was an individual that we were familiar with. And so they made a decision not to arrest this individual, and to let them go home and try to get them with their family members to get them some help. Um, but once it came to the light of what the entire story was, and all of the information of what happened, clearly we should have arrested this individual on the spot. And so it was one of those things where, all right, yeah, we made a mistake. It's a learning lesson for us, and here's what happened. Here's what we can do moving forward. And these are the actions that we're going to take. It's not like, we know who the individual was. We have all the information, so there's a process for us to follow up, and to make sure that this issue is addressed appropriately. But at the same time, man, the community was very upset with how we handled it on the front end. And hey, I get it 100%. But it's things like that where, all right, man, there's no need for me to hold on to that, and for it to take 4 or 5 days for me to come out and say something about that or address that. Is all right, yeah, we didn't handle this how we should have.
So, Chief,
Um,
can I just jump in? I got to jump in on
yeah.
this. So, I find it very interesting that the the angst that was caused in the community was for the police not taking action on somebody when you think about what's going on across the country, people are complaining that we take too much action against people or use too much force. So here's a
Well,
time where I just want to round the corner on this. There's a time where officers use their discretion and they err on the side of, for whatever reason, maybe you said get this person the help they need. So I'm assuming that there's some sort of mental health and or substance abuse issue in there. Yes.
yes.
So here's a time where we do that, and we realize, and somebody makes a decision that maybe a jail cell might not be the best place for this person, right or wrong,
Hmm.
and the community's up in arms about that. So that just brings me back to my point, where sometimes you're seeing more and more where no matter what you do, someone's going to have a serious issue with it.
Correct. And so that speaks to, what I was saying earlier about, man, sometimes, you have, community members that want different things. And that's completely fine. And so, like I said, our charge is whatever, incident or issue we go into is to make sure that we handle it professionally, that we follow our rules and our policies and our guidelines, and that we're checking our rules and our policy and our guidelines on a continual basis to make sure that they still apply, that they're still relevant to what we have going on. And if we do all of those things, and we're going by and we're doing things that we set out, that we explain and set out what the expectation is for how we're going to do things, all right, whether people like it or whether people don't like it, man, we can speak to that, and we can address it. And that's one of the things that I would say I've learned the most since I've been up here and being in this position is, yeah, it doesn't matter what you do, man. Some people are going to like it, some people are not going to like it. And all right, it's my job is I have to respect both of their outlooks and their perspectives on it, because I can't dismiss any of them, because they all bring value to the table. They all bring value into what we're trying to do. And so for those who don't like, some of the decisions or some of the things, I can only hope that we create an environment that is welcoming enough that, they would be open to having a conversation, or coming in to discuss it, with an open mind, to see, all right, if we could find some commonality or some common ground, and what our differences may be. But some of it, some things, man, we don't have a lot of time to make a decision on.
Sure,
We just we have
absolutely.
to make a decision.
It's
And
split
we
second.
exactly split second, and we have to live with those decisions. And one thing that I can rest on is, man, I pride myself on having a good heart, man. I pride myself on having a good heart. And so, man, I'm rooted in knowing that my decisions come from a good place. Like, I don't have any malice in my heart when it comes to doing this job. And so, that's not saying that I'm not going to make mistakes and make some bad decisions sometimes. But even when I make, bad decisions, I truly genuinely feel as though, man, that decision came from a good place. And just, what I was faced with at the time is what led me to make the decision that I had to make. And if we can get, more law enforcement on that page, I think we'll see progress, man. And I think we'll see some positive change in our communities.
All right. I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, as you know, I work in the Northeast. I've worked in two states. I've worked in New Hampshire and I've worked in Massachusetts. And I can tell you that that mistake of the heart versus mistake of the mind is huge here.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, yes, police officers in Massachusetts and New Hampshire are not perfect, but there's not a lot of people that are making a mistake of the mind, where they are going out there, and that I've seen, they're going out there and they're intentionally trying to harm people. They're intentionally, no, I've never been in a locker room where somebody says, well, if I see this person, I'm gonna injure them or anything like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like you said, things happen in split seconds, yes. But I don't I think that we're in a good place here in this part of the country, as far as officers making sound decisions, and really think using having that good heart mentality that you're talking about.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, we know largely, man, that's what we have in this profession.
mhm.
But we also know, man, there's some people in this profession that got to go. And so that's one of the things that we have to be, as intentional about. Is highlighting the individuals that do it the right way, and do it, do things good. And also, man, trying to correct, the behaviors that we want to see change. And then when we see somebody that is just resistant to that change, man, we have to get them gone.
all right. Well, let's hit the chat. The chat's lighting up here. So I don't know if this is a comment or so that's like a teacher going before someone from the DPW for promotion. I think community involvement is instrumental, but not to determine someone's merits. All right, so that was a comment there. Go ahead, Chief. You want to
But
speak to
yeah,
that
and
really
so
quick?
one thing that I'll expand upon on that is the community part is just one part of a process. And so it's not like that's the only part of a promotional process is, the community's part is, most promotional assessments or the promotional process have different parts to it that
Sure.
you go through. And so that's just one part of it. And so, it's more to it. But our community members do have, they do have a part in the process. And I think
and
it's
and, and
important.
and I'm going to double down on that and say, as somebody I've interviewed a bunch, and I've been on both sides of the table for interviews in police work and before I was a police officer, and that's correct. That's a component just to make sure that because you do kind of want the community to give you your blessing on a candidate to make sure they pass the sniff test, so to speak, before you put them on the street in charge of these people. I see that point of it. I would just I to that commenter's point, I would just want to see the how much their opinions weighted would matter to me. So I have another question from there. So how do officers feel about having the community be a part of the hiring and promotional process? So what's your rank and file think about that, Chief? It's a great question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Man, that one would be hard for me to say. And so here's the thing is, and I believe this was going on previously. I know it was going on before I got here. But that's one of the things that we're required to do because of our consent decree.
And
Um,
can you just put a little meat on the bones? What exactly is a consent decree, and how does that work? If you could just kind of sum that up for everybody that's watching that might not know what it is.
Absolutely. So, after the Michael Brown shooting in 2014, the Department of Justice came into Ferguson, and they did an investigation into the police department. And so, as a result, they released a report with all these findings of problems within the police department, within the city's court system, as such. And so, as a result of their investigation and the findings from their investigation, the city entered into a consent decree with the Department of Justice. And so, pretty much, kind of how it works is this, the Department of Justice may sue a city, if they're not willing to enter into this agreement, and this agreement just outlines all of the mandates and stipulations that you have to get, that the police department or the city has to come into compliance with. And so they look at what the issues were, which, in the Ferguson one, it was largely associated around, community police and community outreach, community engagement, is what a lot of what the problems and issues that they highlighted in their report. And so, that was largely what is built into our consent decree, is just making sure that the community is a part of what we have going on as an organization and as a police department. And so, so the consent decree spells out, that, certain things that we have to do, or certain citizens or certain, committees, have to have people, have to have citizens involved in parts of our process. So our hiring process, our promotional process. And so it's one of the things that, honestly, for us, it's mandated on us.
All right,
Um,
so it's essentially an ultimatum, right? It's like
yeah,
do it or else, right?
yeah. Like, yeah,
Right.
we have to do this. But I will take it a step further though, is I like it. I like it. And one of the things that we, like I said, man, in law enforcement, man, we have to start changing, man. We have to start expanding how we look at these things and how we view these things.
Hmm.
And we have to stop looking at the community as us versus them. And so, it's like, man, we want to be in this club. So, like, all right, man, we want to hire somebody to be a police officer. And it's like, all right, man, well, the community don't know anything about being a police officer. So what can they offer to that, to that process? But you know what, man, the community knows everything about being a part of the community. And what in the world is the officer's job? Is to be out in that community, man, working with the people in that community. So, it makes perfect sense for them to be a part of the process. Now, like I said, it's not like, they are the sole process where, all right, if they like, now we don't like this person or this or that, like, we have to weigh it no differently than when they go through an interview panel, with an officer and a sergeant, or if they make it to my command staff interview panel. Man, it's all graded the same, and we have to weigh it and look at it. And so all of that information comes to me for me to review and look through and just see what everybody is saying about this individual. And so that just speaks to, the process where, all right, man, you have officers that are saying, all right, yes, man, we like this individual. This is somebody that we would like to work with. We think they'll be a good addition to our team. And you have community members in that same process saying, we like this individual, man. Hey, I want this individual coming to my house. If I have a problem at my house, I feel comfortable with this individual coming to my house to help me. Like, how, and so when we look at things like, yeah, this is mandated on us, and so of course there's always resistance to anything that we're told to do. I think that's just a part of human nature.
Oh,
But
with
once
a
you
bunch of type A people? No way. I can't see that
exactly,
happening.
but once you get past that part of the process and you just really look at it and see it for what it is, all right, man, you see, man, it kind of makes sense. And as you start looking around the country, especially, man, some areas and some communities where, there have been some bad things to happen, or some polarizing things to happen. What do you see that's coming out of a lot of these spaces? You start seeing a community being added to the process at some level. And so it's just, for us, that's what we have in place. And like I said, I think it goes over really well.
Uh, So, I mean, definitely that's a comprehensive answer. The thing that you said the best that really resonated with me and got me excited early on was how you take the time to educate the people that are part of this process. It's important that people that if you joined us late, again, I'm here with Chief Jason Armstrong, Ferguson PD, and you talked about educating the people that are going to be part of this process before they take part. That's huge to me. If as long as they have an understanding and a baseline, like in a Citizens Police Academy, we do one where I work. It's gotten phenomenal reviews. We have a lot of officers. We have a lot of different people that take part in it, and it's something that we take a great deal of pride in. So I certainly strongly recommend that you get that up and running.
Absolutely.
So that, like I said, the chat's lighting up here. So we'll see if we can address some of these other folks. All right. So this comment that says, Dan says, citizens police academies are typically for adults. What are you doing to get the youth involved to foster understanding and communication with the next generation?
Great question.
It sure is.
So one of the things, man, we had set up was, we were having a youth summit back in April. Uh, but that's when the pandemic really got going, and we had to cancel it. And so what we've done in the interim, is one of the things, and like I said, I have to go back to the consent decree because I don't know if we would be doing this without it. But one of the things that we are mandated to do on some of our policies is we have to get input from the youth, and it is a requirement of ours. And so one of the things that we just did was, so we're working with the local school district here, and so we made up a questionnaire. So the information that we need, the youth input on, we made up a questionnaire. And so the school district, they put it on, they're doing online classes, and virtual. And
Mhm.
so, they have, a virtual platform that the students are in. And so they put our survey and our questionnaire on the high school students virtual platform. And so the last number that I was updated on, I think we were up to over 120 students who had filled out this survey and this questionnaire to provide us feedback on this policy, that we're working on, that has been identified that it would largely affect young people. And so once again, it's something that, we were required to do. But when you look at it and you see, all right, man, the interest that these young people took into, all right, man, letting their voice be heard, and okay, all right, man, they want my opinion on this. This is how I feel about it. And so we'll get that information, and that will be a catalyst for us to get with them to have, continued dialogue and continued communication. And so but that was something that with us being in the post COVID or, you know, pandemic era where, you know, we have to do all this stuff virtually, that gave us a great opportunity to be able to reach, you know, a lot of them, you know, with a little bit of effort to get some, you know, some critical information and feedback from them. And so you just have to be intentional about, you know, trying to find ways and avenues to interact and engage the young people, because that's really where it's at. That's really where it's at. And we have the biggest opportunity to make that impact with young people. We just, you know, we have to find ways to communicate with them on their level and in their space.
I love the idea of getting them a questionnaire and having them fill out the questionnaire. And I mean, if for no other reason, like you said, you know, just to get them thinking, and just to get them thinking about, hey, like, you know, if X happens, Y could be the result. So let me try to be part of this solution. And who knows, you know, maybe that's a great way to get kids to start thinking about getting in this line of work, because I mean, that's another show all to itself about how it doesn't
Oh
seem
yeah.
like, you know, a lot of young folks really want to do this job. But I digress. So let's move on from there. We said we have a nice comment here. It says, Dean, we need more people with yours and the chief's perspective in the world. Thank you both for what you do. I don't know the chief, but there is no one with a better, bigger heart than you, my friend. All right. If I had the ability to blush, I'd blush right now after reading that. I appreciate the kind words. So from there, why don't we go into a video to show another version of a crisis of leadership? So I'm going to go and pull this up in the stream. Folks, check this out. You're not going to believe this one.
David Brown spent about an hour today talking with reporters, answering questions, and basically offering everything he has on the ambush. He also made it clear he believes his officers went beyond bravery when the gunfire started, and offered a unique challenge to those who protest his male and female officers. Fox 4's Sean Rabb in downtown Dallas with more. Sean.
Hey, Steve, you know, we've seen the chief in these kind of tense moments before, but today, Chief Brown pulled back the veil on his personal life, sharing the story of a man who in his senior year on a full scholarship to UT Austin left college to become a Dallas police officer. For 33 years, he's not been answering calls, but he's been answering a calling.
I actually left college my first semester of my senior year to come back and apply for the Dallas Police Department to do something about what I was seeing in my neighborhood.
Because crack cocaine was destroying lives in Dallas.
My friends who stayed here became involved in that, and it broke my heart. And it changed what I wanted to do.
David Brown's dream was to be a prosecutor, but the broken lives of friends hooked on drugs led Brown to a life of protecting and serving.
That I get so much satisfaction that I can do a small thing to help this community. I just love Dallas, and I love serving. It's part of my character, it's part of who I am. I get all the crap we got to take as police officers. The satisfaction you get from serving, much more gratifying, much more gratifying. And it's like that for a lot of police officers in this country.
Brown, who became chief in April 2010, has had personal challenges that have played out publicly. His son killed by police after killing a police officer in June of 2010, 2 months after he became chief. His efforts to reform policing has been met with resistance and attempts to push him out of office. He's led the department through a near riot following an officer-involved shooting and last summer's attack on Dallas Police Headquarters by James Boulware. That was called the worst day in the history of Dallas police until last Thursday. Brown says the city he loves back.
They took an inner city kid like me with flaws and made me their police chief. That's an extraordinary city, and have supported me through very difficult challenges. You don't see that everywhere. You know, one of the first people to get fired when we had controversy, the police chief, get thrown under the bus. Is one of the most difficult jobs in the country right now, being a police chief in a major city. And I've seen my friends just thrown under the bus, man, when something go bad. I haven't this mayor, this council, this city manager, the previous city manager, Mary Soon, hello Mary, she hired me, are they're different people, they're special.
And to those protesting for change, Brown says there's another way.
We're hiring. Get off that protest line and put an application in. And we'll put you in your neighborhood and we will help you resolve some of the problems you're protesting about.
You know, understanding and learning about his motives for becoming a police officer helps us.
All right. That is an incredible set of circumstances. You want to talk about ebbs and flows. I mean, we're talking about a gentleman that gave up a football career to come back and a law career to come back and be a police officer, rises through the ranks. Then he has a son that shoots and kills a police officer, only to have that son shot and killed by a police officer, all while he's the chief.
Yeah.
If that's not the very definition of a crisis of leadership, I don't know what is. Chief, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Man, and it's hard for me to speak to that because I can't imagine, you know, how difficult of a situation that was for him to live through and to experience. But man, what I will say about it though is one of the things that I try to convey to people when I speak to them and when I speak to them about this profession, you know, I perfectly understand the higher standard that we're supposed to hold ourselves to, you know, as taking an oath to be law enforcement professionals. But one thing that I always try to get across to people is life comes for all of us. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. It doesn't matter that you are a police officer, man. Life comes for all of us. And we all have challenges, you know, in life. And so just because, you know, we wear a uniform, it doesn't absolve us of that. And Chief Brown, you know, and what he shared in that interview is the embodiment of that. Like, I mean, I don't know how much more critical it could get for somebody having to live through all of that in that short period of time. And he had just become chief 2 months into, you know, being the chief, and he's having to deal with that. And so, you know, for those of us inside the organization, and hopefully, you know, man, as leaders, you know, we build up, you know, good relationships, working relationships with our employees, you know, so we can, you know, we can know the things that they're going through, or they feel comfortable explaining and expressing the things that they're going through, you know, so we can use that and try to give them whatever assistance or whatever help that they need to deal with things, just like anybody else needs. Because like I said, man, life comes for all of us. And that's why it's so critical just to be kind to people, period. No matter who we're talking about or who you're dealing with. Man, you never know what somebody is going through. You never know what somebody is going through. Perfect example, Chadwick Boseman, who recently passed away. And pictures started circulating of him, you know, online and social media, because he had lost weight. And so you see people just dogging him out on social media, you know, about him losing weight. And it's all funny because, you know, nobody knows anything about it. But then the man dies unexpectedly. And now the world finds out that we have cancer. And now it's like, all right, you know, man, you don't know what anybody is dealing with. And that's why, you know, the automatic default for all of us, for all human beings, should just be to be kind to one another. And just, you know, man, try to be something that is positive for somebody and not negative. And man, we just have to pray for one another, man. You know, I was at a prayer breakfast this morning, and you know, I can't be thankful enough for all the people that I know that are out there that are praying for me, because man, it's a difficult job to do. And then when you just add on just all the layers and the levels of challenges that come with it, man, we need support systems. That's the only way you survive in this.
Well put. You know, I can't stress it enough. And to piggyback on your point about treating people with kindness and going down the lines of do unto others as we want done to ourselves. I said in a previous show that if we just followed the basic rules that our kindergarten teachers set forth for us when we were 5, 6 years old, we'd be in a much better place.
Absolutely.
Treat people the way you want to be treated. Be kind. Be thoughtful. Share when you have the ability to share.
Yeah.
Just little things like that would make things so much easier. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. It's layered and it's complex.
That
It's
it
like
is.
that. So let's go back to the chat. So the next one is, how do you as a leader work on the morale for the officers during these times?
That's a good one. And first, I'll say this, and I'll put myself on Front Street, is I have to do a better job. I have to do a better job in that arena. And at the end of the day, man, people want to feel valued and appreciated for what they do.
Definitely.
And we have to find ways to do that. And so I can give you a perfect example of just something that I did today, whereas I had to ask for help. I had to ask for help. Recently a citizen mailed me a letter, wrote a letter, and sent it to me at the police department, just really praising one of my officers, and just really appreciative for what that officer had done for trying to help them and assist them on a call for service. And so, man, I got this letter, and I'm just like, all right, man, this is awesome. Like as a leader, as a police chief, like it doesn't get any better than that right there, for somebody to be so appreciative of the service that they got, from one of your officers, that they take the time to write a letter and mail it to you. And so I'm like, all right, man, I have to take advantage of this opportunity to share my appreciation, for this officer. And so, man, I put a little certificate together, and I went to roll call to present it to him. And so, so, he was very appreciative, for me doing that. But I also recognize that, all right, man, I know I have other officers that are doing just as great of things that, man, I may not, that the person may not write me a letter about, but I need to be able to show them the appreciation, that they deserve, in that same space. And so, I had a command staff meeting today, and so I sent all my sergeants, who they're the ones that have the most knowledge about what's going on day in and day out. I sent all my sergeants, a template of the certificate that I created for the one officer, and it's like, guys, I need your help. Okay, if you find out about something that needs to be highlighted and stuff, all right, man, you fill out this certificate and just send it to me, so I can print it out and sign it, and I can come to roll call and I can present it to the officer.
Oh,
And
I
and
love how you empowered your supervisors to do that. That's fantastic.
and so, but
Good
that's
for
the
you.
thing is, like, man, I recognize that I need help in this space, man, because I'm not doing a good enough job at it. And so when you talk about building up the morale and stuff, for a leader, man, I think one of the important parts is, I mean, we got to look in and see where we're falling short, and where we could do a better job of sharing, of sharing the appreciation and showing, the gratitude, for the job that we're doing. Because in my almost 20 years in this profession, this is absolutely the toughest time that I have experienced, being in this profession. And it's critical. It's critical, that we go that extra step, or we go that extra mile to try to show it. And like I said, I'll be the first person to admit that I need to do a better job in that. And so it's something that I'm working on.
Well, it sounds to me like you're well on your way. I've been in a lot of different spaces, and that creating the certificate and sending it to your supervisors um, could raise morale on a lot of different levels. You're empowering your supervisors, which would obviously, supervisors need to feel valued as well,
Oh,
not just
absolutely.
the patrol people. So what you're doing is a police version of a trickle down. You know what I mean? You're showing appreciation to your supervisor. You're empowering them to bring this to your attention, which in turn will make them. I would think, I know if I was in that circumstance, it would make me be like, wow, I really want to run with this, and that'll make me want to identify officers that deserve that certificate. So I just think that that's a great example of thinking outside the box there,
And
Chief.
and 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 here's where the communication piece comes in, is because while we were talking about it, then somebody posed the question. I was like, all right, well, is this just for officers? What about but dispatchers and my
Mhm.
my citizen staff? And I was like, nah, this is for everybody. And so, man,
I like it.
everybody needs to be uh-oh.
All right, the chief froze up there. We'll get him back momentarily. Again, if you're listening live, This is Difficult Conversations. We have Chief Jason Armstrong from Ferguson PD. All right, let me go ahead and bring him back in. You can also check us out on Spotify, Amazon, and you're back. Spotify, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts as well. So, Chief, so I'm going to move on to another question.
Okay.
So we have, I think you expected one of these. So after the Michael Brown incident, how was the morale of the rest of the police officers you were able to retain on the force after you had to dismiss some officers? Basically what that says there. So just to provide a little context, the chief was not there during this, but I'll let you speak to that, Chief.
Yeah, correct. And so, I was not here, and I wasn't the chief when the Michael Brown incident happened. So, I just came here in July of 2019. So, pretty much, I got here 5 years after the fact. But I believe the question was asking, how difficult was it to retain officers?
Yep.
And so there's been a drastic turnover from the officers that were here in 2014 when that happened compared to now. And so I believe there were about 53 officers in the department when the shooting happened. And of those 53, I believe I only have maybe 8 or 9 that are still there that were here back when that happened.
When you said drastic, I was expecting you lost like 10 or 12. like that's usually drastic, in a 5-year turnaround. But I mean, my goodness, to lose. So we're talking, so you think you have 9 left? So 40 plus?
It's right around 8 or 9, maybe 10 left that was here back then.
So I guess on the good side, it's like picking your own team. You have the team you want. Like if you were the GM of a sports team, you'd be like, all right, this is my team. But the downside is there must have been some pretty serious growing pains there while you were recruiting your new team, no?
We're still going through growing pains.
Mm-hmm.
And man, we're still, we still have a lot of openings that we're trying to fill. And so one of the things that you have from that is largely, what we bring in are younger officers, that are just getting started in their careers. And so, you always have growing pains, when you have young officers that are coming on board that haven't done this job before. And so yeah, man, we have a lot of growing pains and we have a lot of, unique challenges, that are on our shoulders of different things that we have to get done and that we have to do that, the regular average police department doesn't have to deal with. And so, there's a lot that's on our plate that we have to manage, all at the same time. And so when you have something like that, there are a lot of growing pains in it. But, but the way I look at it is, man, we have a lot of opportunity for growth. And we have a lot of opportunity to be a model and be an example of what what this can look like. And so that's the part of it that really resonates with me, and that's the part that I try to focus the most on, because if I focus about all the challenges and everything that's on our plate, man, it'll keep you down all the time.
Well,
So,
man, I was going to say, Chief, there's a perfect segment for this next group of questions because we're flying through this. We're almost 50 minutes in, if you can believe it.
Gotcha.
So the next one is, has this affected your recruitment? And are you getting more or less applicants?
Has what affected my recruitment?
So just everything you've been going through. So going from, the wake of the Michael Brown incident to, what's going on with the community, COVID.
I would say this is just what we're seeing in the country, period. Everybody's recruitment is affected by this. Nationally, we're seeing a decrease and a decline and people signing up or filling in applications to join law enforcement. We're seeing record numbers of officers retiring and resigning and leaving the profession right now. And so nationally, we're in a difficult time. Now, one thing that I can say is for us here, all right, I get a lot of applications. And so there are a lot of people that are willing to come work here. Honestly, one of the biggest things is man, we have to do a very. All right, am I still there? You still got me?
I still got you.
Okay, all right. Man, we have a very intensive review process and background investigation that we have to do, on people on that, want to come on and be officers with us. And so, everybody doesn't make it through the background portion or the background check
Sure.
that we do. And so, so that's probably the number one thing, for us that is the challenge with bringing on new people. Is just finding the quality of applicant and the quality of person that we want to bring on. But we get a lot of, we still have a lot of people applying. In the area that we're in, not a lot of agencies hire officers and send them to the academy. And so, we're one of the few agencies, that we have a program in place for us to do
Are
that.
you saying that they want you to already have the academy, or they're sending cops out there with no academy?
No, it's largely, everybody has to be certified and have to have gone to the academy. But,
Okay, just
a
wanna
lot
make
of
sure.
agencies just look to hire individuals that are already certified and already sworn. And so, not a lot of agencies are hiring people and then sending them to start the academy from scratch. And so, so we participate in that. And so that's one of the things that we're recruiting for right now. And so if anybody's watching this in the St. Louis area, you want to move to St. Louis, man, I'm taking applications if you want to get into this line of work. But yeah, so we're hiring right now for cadets to go into the academy, and so it's just you can't hire people fast enough. The hiring process, because ours is so labor intensive and we have so many parts to it. It takes a while to get people through it, and so that's the real challenge and the real struggle when it comes to recruitment. But we're fortunate enough that people still recognize and view our department as a place that they want to come work at.
That sounds good, folks. If you're listening, Ferguson PD, they're hiring. All right, so
We're hiring.
give my man Jason Armstrong, Chief Jason Armstrong, a shout if you're looking to get on the job. So, Chief, we're down under. We got about 8 minutes left. I just want to play a quick video, and then I'll come back to you for a quick comment on it, and
Okay.
then maybe we can have you back at some other time, and we can talk about any number of things in police work. So let me go ahead and get this
Absolutely.
queued up.
Well, I heard a lot of things. Certainly, there are some folks in this community that are legitimately grieving, and we heard from them. We heard a lot of folks who believe the First Amendment only applies to them and took great pains to shout down anybody that disagreed with them. Despite my ongoing disagreements with the police union, I have to say that their members tonight conducted themselves, I thought, with great restraint, given the ad hominem invective that was being unleashed on their work personally and the police department generally. So, this is a controversy. This is a tragedy. I've said it over and over again. It's a tragedy for the family, a tragedy for Officer Manning. It's a tragedy for the community. But I'm not blind to the fact that there's a lot of people lining up to take advantage of this tragedy to flog their own agendas, and that was clear tonight as well.
You were accused of saying something to one of the protesters or one of the people in the stands. He accused you of...
He was making so much noise, I have no idea what he's talking about, but he feels insulted. Too bad.
What's your response to some of the people that thought you were being disrespectful by being on your phone and not being attentive to them?
Well, I was on my phone, and yes, that's true. I was following developments with a 5-year-old little girl sitting on her dad's lap who just got shot in the head by a drive-by shooting. And if some of the people here gave a good goddamn about the victimization of people in this community by crime, I take some of their invective more seriously. The greatest racial disparity in the city of Milwaukee is getting shot and killed. Hello. 80% of my homicide victims every year are African American. 80% of our aggravated assault victims are African American. 80% of our shooting victims who survived their shooting are African American. Now, they know all about the last 3 people that have been killed by the Milwaukee Police Department over the course of the last several years. There's not one of them can name one of the last 3 homicide victims we've had in this city. Now, there's room for everybody to participate in fixing this police department, and I'm not pretending we're without sin. But this community is at risk, all right. And it's not because men and women in blue risk their lives protecting it. It's at risk because we have large numbers of high-capacity, quality firearms in the hands of remorseless criminals who don't care who they shoot. Now, I'm leaving here to go to that scene. And I take it personally, okay? We're going up there and there's a bunch of cops processing a scene of a dead kid. And they're the ones that are going to be out there patrolling and stopping suspects that may have guns under the front seat. They're the ones that are going to take the risks of their lives to try to clean this thing up. All right? We're responsible for the things we get wrong, and we take action. We've arrested cops, we've fired cops, and so on. But the fact is that the people out here, some of them, who had the most to say, are absolutely MIA when it comes to the true threats facing this community, and it gets a little tiresome. And when you start getting yelled at for reading the updates of the kid that got shot, yeah, you take it personal, okay? Now, no offense, but I'm going up there now.
I don't know what to say. I mean, that video is a powerful video. And again, it's another great example about the crisis of leadership that you see. The higher up the chain you go, the more you see that you're getting pushed and pulled in two different directions. So, Chief, we're under 5 minutes left. Can you just give me a quick comment on that? I know it's not fair to just to have you only in about 90 seconds, but can you get in there about that?
I mean, my big takeaway from that is like I said, man, life comes for all of us, and man, sometimes I think people forget, the difficulties of what we deal with and the emotional toll that it takes on us. And clearly, man, he got to speaking about, a child being killed. And that's an emotional thing, man, to have to talk about or have to deal with. And that's, that just goes to the gravity of what we see and what we deal with. And I just had a situation last week or the week before last where we had a 2-year-old that was shot here in Ferguson, in a apparent road rage, incident. And so, where for some people in the public, that may be, it seems far-fetched, but unfortunately for us, like, those are the kind of things that we see and that we deal with. And so
worst part of the job. Nothing worse than dead kids.
Unfortunately, it's a part of the job, and so that's why I keep going back to the point about just being kind to people, because none of us are absolved from it. You saw that was the chief of police that was doing that interview, and clearly
he got pretty emotional too. You could see he was,
exactly, man. Clearly, he was dealing with a difficult time and a difficult situation up there, and it's the natural thing for, if you are really, genuinely and intentional about, man, your care for your community and what you're trying to do for it. Like, all right, man, I expect the individual to get emotional when talking about some of this stuff, because that's the gravity of what we're dealing with. And man, one of the things that, as I've gotten older and as I've matured just as a man is, man, I've changed my mindset of what it means to see a man cry. Before, when I was younger, man, I thought that was a sign of weakness and all the things that, your friends would jab on you about. But man, as I've gotten older and as I've experienced life, because life has come for me also, all right, man, I recognize, man, there is absolutely nothing wrong, with a man crying. I will cry in front of my wife. I will cry in front of my kids if that's how I'm feeling, about the situation. And that just speaks to the gravity of what it is and what it's like, man, to be in some of the situations that we're in and to deal with some of the things, that we deal with. Everybody handles it differently. Like I said, I'm thankful, I'm blessed that I have the support system, and my wife and my kids and my family that I have, to help me deal with those tough times. Because it may have been some situations where I wasn't crying in front of the camera and in the media, but man, I might have been crying when I got home and I was talking to my family about it. So, it's just one of those things, man. It's a part of what we have to deal with.
Chief,
we try to handle it the best way we can, man.
Again, I apologize. It was unfair for me to show something like that, as powerful as that, as late as I did, because we could talk for another hour just about that. We're down under a minute. Any shout outs, any special projects, anything that you want to draw attention to in about 15 seconds or less?
Man, the number one thing is we're hiring. So hey, if anybody is willing to step up to the challenge, and is really intentional about doing good things and being that change agent that, a lot of people in this country want to see, absolutely check out, the City of Ferguson's webpage, and any job postings that we have on there. Outside of that, I just can't stress enough, man, just for everybody to be kind to one another. If we had more of that in the community, in this nation, man, we'd be a better place for it. The election was something that was very polarizing and divided a lot of people. And so, man, my hope is just as we get past it and we move on from it, man, we can find better ways to work together and unite. And because we have a lot of work to do, and it doesn't rest on one person. The president cannot fix all the problems in this country. Never has and never will be able to. And so it's going to take all of us to put forth the effort to try to make this a better place.
Well put, Chief. Well, just like that, an hour has come and gone. Chief Armstrong, I can't thank you enough for everything that you're doing for the city of Ferguson, for taking your time away from your family. And I know that the mountain of work you have to get done to build that department up to where I know that it's going to be. I want to take this time to thank you again personally for what you've done for me. You've empowered me. You've made me feel unbelievable about my sense of worth and my own personal value. And I just want you to know that talk that we had has helped motivate me to do what I'm doing here with Supply the Why. So the success that this is having and the way this is taking off, I just want you to know it's important you know that you share a piece of that success. So thank you for that.
Hey, not a problem. I appreciate it, man. I'm just trying to do, man, what I was hoping and wishing that people would do for me, man, when I was trying to come up, man. So, I always promised myself, man, when I did get to this level, that I would do everything on my power, man, to help people, man, who had that same, those same aspirations and that same vision, man. So I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing, man.
Can we get you back sometime in the future, maybe?
Absolutely, man. I'd be offended. I'd be offended if I didn't come back, man.
Well, thanks again. If I don't talk to you before then, have a happy Thanksgiving. And folks, again, this has been Difficult Conversations. Check us out on Apple, Amazon, and Spotify podcast. You can, if you like this conversation, our Facebook page, share, like, and subscribe. Also our YouTube page. Subscribe to our YouTube page and get the word out there to the folks that might not be on social media. So again, signing off for Difficult Conversations. We'll see everybody next week. Thanks again for tuning in.